My name is Nolan Mercer, and I was 52 years old when a detective asked me why my son never mentioned the thief missing from my bedroom closet. I was sitting in a plastic chair inside the Willow Creek police station, holding a paper cup of black coffee that had gone cold in my hands. Rain crawled down the front windows in thin silver lines. The place smelled like wet jackets, old carpet, and copier toner. A broken wall clock above the records counter clicked too loudly, 1 hard second at a time. My son, Trevor, sat beside me with his elbows on his knees and his hands folded like a man praying for me. He had been doing that since the break-in, calling every morning, checking the doors, telling everyone, Dad shouldn't be alone right now. He had even installed a new lock on my back door and moved a chair against the hallway window before he left each night. For 6 days, I thought he was protecting me. Then Detective Sarah Bell walked into the interview room with a yellow folder tucked under her arm and looked directly at Trevor. Mr. Mercer, she said, but her eyes stayed on my son. When you reported the burglary, you listed jewelry, a laptop, and some cash. You did not list the safe. Trevor's face changed so slightly that most people would have missed it. I did not. I spent 23 years as a police evidence technician before I retired into county records. My job had been to notice the small things people hoped would disappear under fear. A thumbprint on the wrong side of glass. Mud on a carpet when the report said the suspect came through a window. A signature that leaned one way on Tuesday and another way on Friday. Trevor's left hand tightened around his right thumb. Detective Bell set the folder on the table. The neighbor across the street saw 2 men remove a small gray safe from your house at 9:42 p.m., she said. Your son was one of them. I heard the rain before I heard my own breathing. Trevor turned toward me. Dad, I can explain. But before he could, the door behind Detective Bell opened. A uniformed officer stepped in with a little girl standing beside him. She was maybe 8 years old, small for her age, wearing a red scarf that looked too old-fashioned for a child, and carrying a blue metal lunchbox against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Her brown hair was damp from the rain. Her shoes had little stars drawn on them with black marker. She looked at me with eyes I had not seen in 20 years. My sister's eyes. The officer said, Detective, this is the child from the taxi driver's statement. The little girl looked past everyone and straight at me. Are you Uncle Noli? She asked. No one had called me Noli since my sister April died. The coffee cup folded in my hand, spilling cold coffee over my fingers. Trevor stood too fast, his chair scraping the floor. Why is she here? He said. Detective Bell turned slowly toward him. That, she said, is what I was hoping you could tell us. The little girl held out the lunchbox with both hands. On the front was a faded painting of a yellow school bus under a blue sky. One corner was dented. A piece of masking tape had been stuck near the handle, and on it, in careful handwriting, was written, Maya Mercer. Under that, in smaller letters, was a phone number I knew by heart. It was my childhood home number. The house had been sold 12 years earlier. I did not take the lunchbox right away. My fingers would not move. The little girl's mouth trembled. Mom said if I ever got lost, I should find Uncle Noli. She said, you keep things safe. Trevor whispered, Dad, don't. That was the second thing I noticed. He was not surprised by the child. He was afraid of what she carried. The officer guided Maya into the chair across from me. She put the lunchbox on the table and rested her hands on top of it. Her nails were bitten short. The red scarf around her neck had one loose thread hanging from the edge. I remembered my sister April wearing a scarf just like that when she was 16, standing under the porch light, waiting for our father to come home from night shift. Detective Bell sat down. Nolan, she said gently, do you know this child? I looked at Maya. Her chin had April's small, stubborn point. Her left eyebrow lifted just a little higher than the right when she was scared. April used to do that when she was trying not to cry. No, I said. My voice came out almost empty. But I think I should have. Maya looked down at the lunchbox. Trevor rubbed his forehead. This is getting out of hand. Detective Bell opened the yellow folder. Inside were photographs printed from surveillance footage, witness notes, and a property inventory sheet from my own house. I saw my bedroom closet door hanging open. I saw the empty corner where my safe had been bolted into the floor. I saw shoe prints on the hardwood. One print was from a size 11 work boot. Trevor wore size 11. The detective slid one photograph toward me. It showed the gray safe sitting in the open trunk of Trevor's SUV. The image was grainy, but it was clear enough. I stared at that photograph and felt something inside me go very quiet, not peaceful, dangerous. There is a kind of quiet that comes before a man breaks, but there is another kind of quiet that comes before he starts counting. I had spent a lifetime counting evidence tags, chain of custody seals, case numbers, dates, times, receipts, names on forms, the order in which lies entered a room. I looked at my son. "What was in the safe, Trevor?" He swallowed. "It was for your own good." That sentence has been used to bury more truth than any shovel. I did not raise my voice. I never did. My father used to say anger wasted oxygen, and my sister used to laugh and tell him I was born already disappointed in people. Maybe she was right. Maybe silence was my first language. But that day, inside that small police station, with a child wearing my dead sister's scarf and my son sweating beside me, I understood something with a clarity that felt almost cold. The break-in had not been the crime. It had been the cover. Before that day, my life was small by choice. I lived alone in a one-story house on Maple Ridge Road, 3 miles outside Willow Creek, Oregon. It was a plain house with white siding, a dark green roof, and a porch light I replaced every November before the winter storms came in. My neighbors were kind people who waved without asking too much. My mailbox leaned slightly to the left. My garage smelled like motor oil and cardboard. The maple tree in the front yard dropped red leaves every fall, like it was trying to warn me about something. I worked 4 days a week at the county records office. Not because I needed to, but because retirement had made my apartment too loud. After 23 years in evidence, I knew how to file grief better than feel it. Records gave me rows and columns, birth certificates, property deeds, probate notices, marriage licenses, death indexes. People thought records were cold. They were not. Records were the bones of human choices. Every morning I woke at 5:40 without an alarm. I made black coffee in the same chipped mug that said World Oakus Brother, a gift from April on my 32nd birthday. I ate toast standing at the counter. I checked the locks even though I already knew they were locked. Then I drove my old Ford Ranger into town and parked in the third space from the courthouse steps. On Fridays I visited my father's grave, not my mother's. My mother, Elaine Mercer, was still alive, very alive, still sharp, still dressed for church even on weekdays, still able to turn a room cold by saying, "I'm just being honest." I had not had dinner at her house in almost 2 years. My son Trevor said that was my fault. "You keep people at arm's length," he told me once. "Then you act surprised when they stop reaching." Maybe there was truth in that. Trevor was 29, tall like me but smoother around the edges. He sold home security systems, which became bitterly funny later. He knew how to smile with his whole face and lie with only half of it. He had married Kelsey, a woman with perfect hair, perfect teeth, and a way of saying family that always sounded like property. They lived 20 minutes away in a newer subdivision where all the houses looked like they had been drawn by the same tired architect. Trevor visited when he wanted something, help with a down payment, advice on a contract, the name of a lawyer, a copy of an old title document, a favor at the courthouse. But after the break-in, he appeared with groceries, concern, and a new deadbolt. That was what made it worse. The night of the break-in, I had been at the county archives, finishing a volunteer project no one else wanted, digitizing probate indexes from the 1980s. It was dull work which suited me. Rain had started around 7. By 8:30, the old building smelled like damp paper and ceiling leaks. At 9:16, Trevor called. "Dad, where are you?" "At work. You need to come home." His voice sounded breathless. I asked him what happened. "I came by to check on you. Your back door's open." I remember standing there in the aisle between 2 shelves of old deed books, my hand still on the spine of volume 14. "Did you call the police?" "Yeah," he said. "I'm outside. Just come home." When I arrived, 2 patrol cars were in my driveway. Their red and blue lights flashed against the wet siding of my house. Trevor stood under the porch, arms folded, face pale. He came down the steps and hugged me before I could stop him. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I should checked sooner." Inside, the house looked wrong in a way that made my skin tighten. Drawers pulled out, couch cushions on the floor, books knocked from shelves, my bedroom closet open, mud near the back door, a kitchen chair tipped over, though no one would need to tip a chair during a burglary unless they wanted it to look hurried. I noticed that first. Then I noticed what they wanted me not to notice. The safe was gone. It had been small, gray, fireproof, and bolted into the corner of my closet. I kept old family documents in it, my father's discharge papers, my birth certificate, April's obituary, a few savings bonds, my divorce decree, some cash, a pocket watch that belonged to my grandfather. Things thieves might take if they had time, but not things worth staging a burglary over. Except there had been one envelope in that safe I had never opened. April had mailed it to me 14 years earlier. It arrived 3 days after her funeral. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and sealed with tape. On the front, in April's handwriting, it said only if something doesn't make sense. At the time, everything already didn't make sense. April had died at 34 from what my mother called a private medical complication. She had been living 2 states away in Idaho. I had not seen her for nearly 6 years before she died, not because I did not love her, but because my family had turned distance into a wall, and I had been too tired to keep climbing it. My mother told me April wanted privacy. My younger brother Gavin told me she was ashamed of some choices. Trevor was 15 then, too young to understand anything except that adults were speaking in lowered voices. At the funeral, my mother kept April's casket closed. She wouldn't want people staring, she said. I believed her because grief makes fools out of people who once trusted facts. When the envelope arrived, I held it for almost an hour. Then I put it in the safe unopened. I told myself I was respecting April. The truth was uglier. I was afraid that if I opened it, I would learn I had failed her, so I locked it away. For 14 years, when I saw the empty corner of the closet after the break-in, my first thought was not money. It was April. Trevor stood in the bedroom doorway, watching me. "Looks like they cleaned you out," he said. I looked at the floor. The safe was bolted down. He nodded too quickly. "Must have brought tools." Why would a burglar bring tools for a safe he didn't know existed? Trevor looked toward the patrol officer taking notes in the hall. "Dad, don't do this right now. You're in shock." That was his first mistake. People who tell you what emotion you are feeling are often trying to keep you from thinking. But I let it pass. I let the officers take the report. I let Trevor drive me to his house that night because he insisted I shouldn't be alone. Kelsey made tea I didn't drink. Their living room smelled like vanilla candles and new furniture debt. Kelsey sat beside me on the couch and touched my arm. "You poor thing," she said. "This is exactly why older people shouldn't live isolated." I was 52. Trevor glared at her, but not hard enough. The next morning, he drove me back home and changed the locks. He told me not to worry about the safe. "Probably dumped in a ditch by now," he said. I looked at him. "You think so?" Thieves panic. They take what they can, ditch what they can't open. He said it like a man repeating something he had practiced. For 6 days, I let my son think I believed him. Not because I did, because evidence teaches patience. Then Detective Bell called and asked me to come down to the station. She did not mention the child on the phone. She did not mention the taxi driver. She only said, "There are details in your burglary report we need to clarify." That was how I ended up in that interview room, staring at Maya Mercer's blue lunchbox while my son's lie began to come apart. Detective Bell asked Trevor to step outside. He refused at first. "I'm here for my father." "No," she said. "Right now you are a person of interest in his burglary." His face reddened. "That's ridiculous." She did not blink. Then waiting outside should be easy. Trevor looked at me, expecting rescue. I gave him nothing. He pushed back his chair and walked out, his shoes squeaking once on the tile. When the door closed, the room felt larger and worse. Maya sat with the red scarf tucked under her chin. She had not taken her eyes off the lunchbox. Detective Bell softened her voice. "Maya, can Mr. Mercer look inside?" The girl nodded. My hands moved slowly. I unclipped the metal latch. It made a small sound that felt too loud. Inside was a folded drawing, an old toy truck, a library card, and a small photograph wrapped in a napkin. The toy truck was red with chipped paint and one missing wheel. Underneath, in black marker, were the initials A.M. April Mercer. I knew that truck. I had given it to April when she was 6 and I was 10. Our father had brought home a box of old toys from a church rummage sale, and I took the truck because I wanted it. April cried without making sound, which was always worse than crying loud. That night, I put the truck on her pillow and pretended I didn't know how it got there. She kept it for years. Now it sat in a child's lunchbox. I picked up the photograph. It showed April sitting on a porch I did not recognize, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. Her face looked thinner, tired. But she was smiling at the baby like the rest of the world had finally gone quiet. On the back, written in April's handwriting, were 6 words. "Maya, 3 months. Tell Noli someday." I had seen dead bodies, crime scenes, burned houses, families screaming in hospital hallways. I had logged evidence from cases that made younger officers quit before lunch. But nothing had ever struck me with the force of that photograph. My sister had a child. My sister had a daughter. And my family buried that truth deeper than they buried her. I did not cry. Not then. My body was too busy going numb. Detective Bell watched me carefully. You didn't know? I shook my head. Maya whispered, Mom said you would know the truck. I closed my hand around it. I do. She said you gave it to her because she cried all quiet. That broke something smaller inside me. Not the whole wall, just enough for pain to come through. Detective Bell slid another paper across the table. A taxi driver named Rafael Ortiz brought Maya to the station this morning. He said she got into his cab outside a closed motel near Highway 18. She had $11, this lunchbox, and your name on a folded note. Where was she staying? A woman had checked her in under a false name 3 nights ago. Paid cash. Left before dawn. I looked up. What woman? Detective Bell hesitated. We're still confirming. But the motel clerk described someone matching your daughter-in-law. Kelsey, the vanilla candle smell came back to me so suddenly I felt sick. Maya looked at me. Am I in trouble? No, I said. The word came out firmer than I expected. Detective Bell asked if I needed a moment. I told her no. Moments were for people who had not just learned 14 years of family history were false. Where is her mother? I asked. Though the answer had already started to form, Detective Bell's eyes lowered. That's part of what we need to discuss. She opened another folder. April Mercer had not died 14 years ago from a private medical complication. April died 3 weeks ago. The woman buried 14 years ago was not April. It was a story my family used to end my questions. At first, I thought I had misunderstood. My mind refused the words and tried to arrange them into something survivable. Detective Bell explained slowly. 14 years earlier, April had disappeared from Willow Creek after a family conflict. A death notice had been circulated privately, but no official death certificate existed in Oregon under her name from that year. The funeral had been for a distant cousin whose remains were transported under a closed casket arrangement. My mother had told people it was April because she wanted the shame to end. My sister had been alive in Idaho, alive, raising Maya, alive, writing letters she never sent, alive, believing I had abandoned her. Then 3 weeks ago, April died in a small hospital outside Boise after a late-stage infection complicated by untreated kidney disease. Maya had been placed temporarily with a church volunteer while child welfare tried to locate next of kin. Someone from my family had been notified, not me. My mother, Elaine Mercer, signed an acknowledgement form 12 days after April's death. Then Trevor and Kelsey drove to Idaho, not to bring Maya home, to bring back papers. Detective Bell placed a copy of a form on the table. It was a next-of-kin contact sheet from Ada County Family Services. The emergency family line listed 3 names: Elaine Mercer, Gavin Mercer, and Nolan Mercer. My name had been circled. Beside it, someone had written, "Do not contact, estranged, unsafe." The handwriting was my mother's. There are moments when anger arrives like fire. Mine came like frost. I stared at the word unsafe until the letters lost meaning. Unsafe. I was the man who labeled evidence bags with gloves so a victim's truth would survive court. I was the man who drove Trevor to school every morning after his mother left. I was the man who sent April birthday cards for 6 years and got silence back because my mother told me she wanted none of us. Unsafe. Maya touched the toy truck with one finger. Mom said you find missing things. I could barely breathe. I used to, I said. Detective Bell leaned back. Mr. Mercer, there's more. Of course there was. There is always more after the first lie. Lies have roots. She told me Rafael Ortiz, the taxi driver, had done more than bring Maya to the station. He had also brought a plastic grocery bag containing a damaged external hard drive and 2 envelopes. He said Maya begged him to keep the lunchbox safe because the tall lady wanted it. He thought it sounded wrong, so instead of taking her to the address she showed him, he drove to the police station. What address? I asked. Detective Bell gave me a look that said she hated this part. Trevor's house. I sat back. Maya's eyes followed every adult face in the room, trying to learn which truth would hurt next. Detective Bell continued. The taxi driver also said Maya mentioned a gray box, my safe. She said your son put it in the back of a black SUV. I looked through the glass panel in the door. Trevor stood in the hallway talking on his phone. His back was turned. One hand was pressed against his forehead. For 6 days he had brought me groceries. For 6 days he had checked my locks. For 6 days he had told me not to worry. And somewhere in those 6 days, he had known a child was hidden in a motel with my sister's lunchbox. Detective Bell asked if I wanted to press charges if evidence supported it. I looked at Maya. She had begun rubbing the loose thread on her red scarf between her fingers, back and forth, back and forth. "I want the truth collected properly," I said. The detective studied me. Maybe she expected tears or rage. People often expect noise when they hear pain. I gave her procedure. "Start with the safe," I said. "Then the motel footage. Then the family services contact log. Then phone records between my mother, Trevor, Gavin, and Kelsey. If my name was marked unsafe, I want the source of that claim. And I want whatever is on that hard drive preserved with a chain of custody." Detective Bell almost smiled. "You sound like you've done this before." "I have." "What did you do?" "Evidence technician. Portland Police Bureau. 23 years. She nodded once, slowly. "Then you know this may get ugly." I looked at the photograph of April and baby Maya. It already is. By late afternoon, Maya was placed temporarily with a licensed emergency foster caregiver named Ruth Calder, a retired school nurse with soft hands, and a house full of quilts. Detective Bell told me I could not take Maya home that night because legal placement required verification, but I could visit the next morning if Child Services approved. Maya did not cry when they led her away. That hurt more. Children who have learned not to cry have been trained by disappointment. Before she left, she turned back and held up the red toy truck. "Do you want it?" I shook my head. "You keep it for now. Mom said it was yours." "No," I said. "I gave it away a long time ago." She looked at the missing wheel. "Will you come tomorrow?" "Yes." "Promise?" The word landed heavier than it should have. I had made promises before, to my ex-wife, to Trevor, to April, though maybe she never heard them. Some I kept. Some I failed by waiting too long. This one I answered carefully. "I will be there tomorrow at 10. Maya nodded, as if exact time made the promise stronger. When she left, Detective Bell gave me a copy of the incident supplement and told me not to confront my family alone. I almost laughed. My family had been confronting me alone for years. They just called it love. Trevor was gone from the hallway when I stepped out. He had not waited for me. His protective act had ended the moment I became dangerous to his lie. In the parking lot, rain hit my face like small cold hands. I sat in my truck for almost 20 minutes without starting the engine. The photograph of April and Maya lay on the passenger seat. The police station lights glowed behind me. Across the street, a diner sign flickered, open, close, as if it could not decide which truth to live with. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Nolan," she said, "Trevor told me you're upset, not confused, not grieving, not shocked, upset. April was alive." Silence. That silence told me more than any confession. Finally, she said, "This is not a conversation for the phone. It became one when you buried my sister while she was breathing." Her breath sharpened. "You do not understand what happened." "Then explain, Maya." Another silence. This one had a shape. Defensive. Calculating. "She is a complicated child," my mother said. I closed my eyes. A complicated child, not a grieving child. Not April's daughter. Not my niece. "A problem. What did you do, Mom?" "I protected this family." That was when I knew Detective Bell was right. It was going to get ugly. The next morning, I woke before dawn and made coffee I did not drink. I stood in front of my closet looking at the empty place where the safe had been. 4 bolt holes remained in the floor like missing teeth. I took photographs from every angle, wide shot, mid shot, close up, bolt marks, scratch patterns, mud transfer, door frame damage, back door lock, window latch, the tipped kitchen chair. Old habits returned easily. Easier than grief. I found a partial print in dried mud near the hallway, not usable probably, but photographed it anyway. I measured the distance from the back door to the closet. I checked the tool marks around the bolt holes. The safe had not been torn out in panic. It had been removed carefully using a socket wrench. Someone had time, someone had keys. At 8:12, I drove to the county records office and used my own access the legal way. Public terminals, logged searches, printed receipts. I searched April Mercer across Oregon, Idaho, Washington. Marriage records, property records, court indexes, probate filings, death certificate locator. April had lived under the name April Mercer Price for 9 years, though no marriage certificate showed up at first. Then I found it in Twin Falls County. Married to a man named Jonah Price, divorced 4 years later. 1 child born during the marriage. Maya June Price. June, our grandmother's middle name. I sat there staring at the screen until my coworker, Bethany, touched my shoulder. "You okay?" "No." She stepped back because I had never answered that honestly before. I printed everything. Birth index reference, divorce docket, address history, Idaho property tax bill, a small claims case involving unpaid medical debt. Then I found the first probate filing, estate of April Mercer Price, filed 17 days earlier. Petitioner, Gavin Mercer, my younger brother. I stared at his name until the room narrowed around it. Gavin had not called me in 8 months. He lived in Bend, owned a boat he could not afford, and talked about liquidity whenever he wanted to borrow money. He had always been charming in a way that made bills appear in other people's hands. When our father died, Gavin asked about tools before he asked about the funeral. Now he had filed to administer April's estate, April, who he had allowed me to believe was dead for 14 years, April, whose daughter was in temporary care. I opened the filing summary, estimated estate assets. Residential property, $286,000 bank account, $21,430 life insurance. Unknown minor child survivor benefits. Pending there it was, the shape of the hunger, not grief. Assets. I printed the docket sheet. My hands were steady. That should have worried me, but it did not. At 10 exactly, I arrived at Ruth Calder's house. It was a small yellow home on Alder Street, with flower boxes under the windows and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Maya sat on the steps with the blue lunchbox beside her and the red scarf around her shoulders. When she saw my truck, she stood but did not run. Ruth met me at the door. "You're Mr. Mercer?" "Nolan." She looked me over with the sharp kindness of a woman who had spent years spotting bruises children did not mention. "She's been waiting since breakfast." Maya looked at my hands first, maybe checking if I brought anything. I had. A small carton of strawberry milk from the gas station and a notebook with a plain black cover. "Mom liked strawberry milk," she said. "I know. April used to drink it through a straw and deny the pink mustache on her lip." Maya accepted the carton carefully. We sat at Ruth's kitchen table. The room smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. A wooden bird hung by the window, turning slowly from a string. Maya set the lunchbox between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Children know when adults are fishing for pain. I did not want to be another person taking pieces from her. So I opened the notebook. "I have questions," I said, "but you can tell me when you want. Or not." She nodded. "I'm going to write down what I know so I don't get it wrong." "Mom did that." "She did?" Maya opened the lunchbox and took out the folded drawing. It showed 3 stick figures standing under a porch light. One was labeled Mom. One was labeled M.E. The third was a tall figure with square glasses and gray hair. "Uncle Noli." I touched the edge of the paper but did not pick it up. "She drew you from a picture," Maya said. "What picture?" Maya reached inside the lunchbox and pulled out the library card. Behind it was a second photograph, smaller and faded. It was me at 28. Standing beside April at our father's retirement picnic. She had her arm around my neck and was laughing. On the back she had written, "My brother Nolan, the safe one." I turned my head toward the window. For 14 years, my mother's word unsafe had lived in a file, but April had written the opposite, the safe one. Maya sipped her strawberry milk. "Mom said Grandma Elaine told you I was bad." My throat tightened. "No. She said maybe you didn't come because Grandma said Mom was bad." I looked at her small hands around the milk carton. "Maya, I didn't know you existed." She watched my face, searching for the lie. "I didn't know your mom was alive," I said. "They told me she died a long time ago." Her eyebrows pulled together, "But she was alive." "I know, that's a big yes," I said. "It is." She looked down. "Mom cried sometimes when mail came back." "What mail?" "Letters." "Do you know who they were for?" She nodded. "You." The room became very still. Ruth moved quietly at the sink, giving us privacy without leaving. Maya reached into the lunchbox again and pulled out a small envelope. It was wrinkled with a purple flower sticker holding it shut. On the front, in April's handwriting, was one word, Noli. My fingers hovered over it. "Mom said not to give it unless people came for the box," Maya whispered. "The safe?" She called it the gray box. "Who came for it?" Maya's lower lip tucked inward. "Trevor and the lady with shiny hair. Kelsey." "When?" "At Grandma Elaine's house. They were talking in the kitchen. Mom was already gone. I was sitting in the hallway. Trevor said, if they got the papers, you couldn't take me. The lady said, if they got the checks first, it wouldn't matter." Ruth stopped washing dishes. I wrote down every word, not because I didn't feel it, because I did. "What checks?" I asked softly. Maya shrugged. "I don't know. I did survivor benefits, insurance, estate funds, maybe a trust." Maya pushed the envelope toward me. "You can read it." I wanted to. God help me. I wanted to tear it open right there and hear my sister's voice come back from the dead. But I had learned one sacred rule in evidence. The first person to touch a thing owns the questions about it, so I took a photograph of the envelope where it sat. Front, back, seal, table placement. I wrote the date, time, location, and names present in my notebook. Then I asked Ruth for a clean plastic storage bag. Maya watched me. Are you mad? Yes. At me? No. At Mom? I looked at the envelope. No. At Trevor? I capped my pen. I am going to be careful before I answer that. She nodded like she understood careful. That hurt too. After the visit, I drove straight to a law office across from the courthouse. The sign outside read Mara Voss, Family Law and Estate Counsel. Mara had been a deputy district attorney years ago, back when I worked evidence. She was small, blunt, and allergic to nonsense. Her receptionist said she had no openings for 2 weeks. I said, "Tell her Nolan Mercer is here with a chain of custody problem involving a minor child." Mara came out herself. She looked older, which meant I probably did too. Her hair had gone silver at the temples, and she wore a navy suit with coffee on one cuff. "What kind of problem?" she asked. "The kind that starts with my family faking my sister's death." She stared at me for a moment, then she opened her office door. "Come in." For 2 hours I told her everything. I laid out the documents in order. Burglary report, photo of missing safe, April's old envelope, Maya's birth index, probate filing, family services contact sheet, notes from Maya's statement. I did not dramatize. I did not speculate. I separated what I knew from what I suspected. Mara listened without interruption. When I finished, she said, "You understand this is not just a custody issue." "Yes, it's potential fraud, obstruction, theft, maybe custodial interference depending on what they did with Maya." "Yes, and your son may be involved." I looked at the table. "Yes," she leaned back. "You want guardianship?" The word landed heavily. Guardianship, not a visit, not answers, not justice in the abstract. A child, a bedroom, school forms, dentist appointments, nightmares, lunches, fever at 2 a.m. A small person standing in the wreckage of adult lies, needing someone to be more than angry. "I don't know how to raise an 8-year-old, I said. Mara's face softened by 1 degree. "Most parents don't. They learn before the child notices. She's already noticed too much." That may be true. I looked at April's envelope, but April wanted me. Then we find out whether she put that in legally usable form. And if she did, then we fight. I nodded. Mara pointed to the envelope. "Open it. I wanted you present." "Good." She called in her paralegal as witness. I photographed the sealed envelope again. Mara cut one edge with a letter opener, careful not to damage the writing. Inside were 3 pages and a smaller folded paper. The first page began rawly. "If this reaches you, then either I got brave too late or something happened before I could fix what they broke." I had to stop reading. Mara waited. I forced myself to continue. April wrote in simple, uneven lines. She told me she had not run away because she hated me. She ran because our mother gave her a choice. Leave town quietly while pregnant or watch the family, handle it legally. April was 20 at the time, scared, unmarried, and ashamed because that was how our mother made every mistake feel permanent. She wrote that Elaine told her. I said she was reckless and selfish. I had never said that. She wrote that Gavin came to Idaho twice asking her to sign papers, giving up claim to family property. I had never known. She wrote that when Maya was born, she mailed me a photo. It came back unopened with "return to sender" written across it. I had never received it. Then came the line that took the air out of the room. I named her Maya June because June was the only woman in our family who knew how to love without making a ledger. Our grandmother June, the woman who kept a porch light on for anyone who came home late, the woman who taught April to sew, the woman who told me, when I was 12, "Your mother confuses control with care. Don't let her teach you the same." April's letter continued. "If something happens to me, find the papers in the gray box. I named you because you were the only one who ever told the truth, gently. Mom will say you are cold. Gavin will say you are selfish. Maybe Trevor will believe whatever helps him. But I remember you putting that red truck on my pillow and pretending angels had wheels." I pressed my thumb and forefinger against my eyes. Mara said nothing. April had included the name of an attorney in Idaho, a woman named Celeste Arden, and a reference number for a standby guardianship document. She wrote that she had filed a letter of intent naming me as preferred guardian for Maya if she died or became unable to care for her. She also wrote that she had created a small trust from a settlement connected to Jonah Price's death. I looked up. Jonah is dead too? Mara was already searching. Within minutes, she found a public obituary. Jonah Price had died 2 years earlier in a logging accident. Maya was his legal daughter. That meant survivor benefits, possibly a wrongful death settlement, maybe life insurance. Mara read the last page of April's letter quietly, then slid it to me. Please don't let them turn my daughter into a check. That sentence did what grief had not yet done. It made me put my hand over my mouth and bend forward until my forehead almost touched the table. I did not sob. I made one sound, small and ashamed, the kind of sound men make when they realize silence did not protect anyone. Mara closed the folder. We need the Idaho attorney. I nodded. And Nolan. I looked at her. You are going to have to decide whether your pain is bigger than Maya's need. That was Mara. No soft landing. I sat back and wiped my face with the heel of my hand. It isn't. By evening, the case had grown teeth. Celeste Arden, April's Idaho attorney, called Mara back at 6:40 p.m. I sat across the desk while Mara put the call on speaker. Celeste's voice was tired and furious. I have been trying to reach Nolan Mercer for 11 days. I never received anything, I said. I mailed notice to your Oregon address. Certified. I looked at Mara. I haven't seen it. Celeste continued. April executed a standby guardianship designation naming you as Maya's preferred guardian. She also wrote a letter excluding Elaine Mercer and Gavin Mercer due to coercive conduct, financial pressure, and prior threats to seek custody for monetary gain. Mara's pen moved quickly. What about Trevor Mercer, she asked. He is not named in the original exclusion. But April added an amendment 6 months ago after Elaine contacted him. My chest tightened. Trevor talked to April? Celeste paused. You didn't know? No. She said he called claiming you wanted nothing to do with her or the child. The room tilted slightly. Trevor had been 28 6 months ago. Not a confused teenager. Not a child listening to adults. A grown man, my son, Celeste continued. April said the call frightened her. She believed your family had become aware of the trust. There it was again, the money, Mara asked. What trust? Celeste explained. Jonah Price's logging accident produced a settlement of $148,000 for Maya, held in a restricted minor trust. In addition, Maya received thousands $12 per month in survivor benefits. April's small house in Nampa was paid down to roughly $42,000 remaining on a mortgage, with equity around $240,000. April had a modest life insurance policy through her job at a dental clinic, $75,000. Beneficiary Maya. My sister had not been rich, but to greedy people, a grieving child with protected funds looks like a locked pantry. Celeste's voice hardened. 3 weeks before April died, someone submitted a representative payee inquiry using Elaine Mercer's address. A week later, Gavin Mercer filed an emergency petition in Idaho claiming Maya had no suitable guardian and that the family wished to relocate her to Oregon. Mara looked at me. I wrote payee inquiry, Elaine address. Gavin emergency petition. Celeste added, that petition did not mention you, Mr. Mercer. In fact, it stated you were deceased. For a moment, no one spoke. Mara said, excuse me. It listed Nolan Mercer as deceased, no surviving maternal uncle available. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because sometimes a lie becomes so bold it circles back into stupidity. Mara leaned toward the phone. Send everything. I already did, Celeste said, to Nolan's address and to the court. But if his safe was stolen, I assume someone intercepted the copies. The safe, April's gray box. The break-in had been about those papers. Trevor had not been protecting me. He had been protecting them from me. That night, I went home to a house that no longer felt burglarized. It felt invaded by people who knew exactly where I kept my heart. I did not turn on the television. I did not eat. I sat at my kitchen table with April's letter, the red truck, and the copy of the probate filing. Rain tapped the windows. The porch light glowed over the empty steps. At 9:13 p.m., headlights swept across my living room wall. A car door closed. My mother knocked once and came in before I answered. Elaine Mercer was 76 years old, wearing a beige coat, pearl earrings, and the same expression she wore at funerals when she wanted people to admire her strength. Trevor followed behind her. Gavin came last, smelling faintly of cigarettes and expensive cologne. Kelsey waited on the porch, then decided the room was safe enough and stepped inside. A family meeting, they had always loved those. Not because they wanted to discuss anything, but because numbers made cruelty feel official. My mother looked around the living room as if the burglary offended her housekeeping standards. Nolan, she said, we need to handle this before you make a terrible mistake. I stood beside the table. You mean before I file for guardianship? Trevor's jaw tightened, Gavin raised both hands. Nobody is saying you can't be involved. Involved, I repeated. Kelsey smiled carefully. Maya needs stability. A 2-parent home, a school district with resources. Trevor and I have already discussed making space. I looked at Trevor. You hid her in a motel. His face flushed. That is not what happened. Maya's words returned. The tall lady wanted it. Trevor said if they got the papers, you couldn't take me. My mother removed her gloves finger by finger. That child has been through enough. Dragging this into court will only hurt her. I looked at April's photograph on the table. She has a name. Elaine's mouth tightened. Do not take that tone with me. I almost smiled. 52 years old, and she still believed Tone was the crime. Gavin stepped forward. April was unstable, Nolan. You didn't see what we saw. I didn't see anything because you told me she was dead. My mother's face did not change. That was necessary. There it was. Not denial. Not remorse. Necessary. Trevor looked down. I asked him, did you call April 6 months ago? His eyes flicked to Kelsey. My son had always been bad at silence when guilt was standing near him. Kelsey answered for him. He tried to help. By telling her I didn't want Maya? Trevor finally looked at me. Grandma said it was better that way. I heard something inside that sentence. Not innocence. Permission. You were a grown man. He flinched. My mother snapped. He was protecting you from a manipulative woman who had already torn this family apart. April was your daughter. She made choices. She had a child. Elaine looked at the table, at April's letter, at the toy truck, and that child came with complications. Gavin sighed. Money, Mom. Just say money before he does. Elaine shot him a warning look. I turned to Gavin. You filed her estate petition. Someone had to. You listed me as deceased. He spread his hands. Clerical mistake. You misspelled deceased perfectly. Kelsey's smile disappeared. Trevor said, Dad, please, we can still fix this privately. I looked at him for a long time. What was in my safe? No one answered. The rain grew louder. What was in my safe, Trevor? He looked at my mother. She said, documents that would confuse the situation. I nodded slowly. Where is it? Gavin laughed under his breath. You always did think you were still a cop. No, I said. I think I'm still a witness. My mother stepped closer. You are not taking that child. There was the truth, stripped clean. Not Maya is better with us. Not we love her. Not April wanted something else. You are not taking that child, I asked. Why? Elaine's eyes sharpened. Because you do not know how to be warm. You keep receipts from grocery stores. You label boxes in your garage. You eat dinner like someone might audit it. A child needs more than a man who alphabetizes his pain. Kelsey looked down, maybe embarrassed by how cruel that was. Gavin wasn't. He smirked. Trevor said nothing. That was the wound, not my mother's cruelty. I had known her blade my whole life, my son's silence. I folded April's letter and put it back into the folder. Leave. Elaine's face hardened. Nolan, leave my house. Gavin stepped toward me. Or what? I looked at him. Or I will stop treating this as a family matter and start treating it as evidence tampering, fraud, and conspiracy to interfere with the placement of a minor. Gavin's smirk weakened. Trevor whispered, Dad. I did not look away from Gavin. I photographed everything before you walked in. My phone is recording from the shelf behind you. You have 30 seconds to decide how much more useful you want to be to me. Kelsey turned toward the shelf. Gavin cursed under his breath. My mother stared at me with something close to hatred. You would do that to your own family? I finally looked at Trevor. No, I said. You did. After they left, I sat in the kitchen until after midnight, writing down every sentence I remembered. Not because I wanted revenge, because memory is emotional. Paper is harder to intimidate. The next week became a map of hidden things. Detective Bell recovered the safe from a storage unit rented under Kelsey's maiden name. The lock had been drilled. Inside, most of my old documents remained, scattered and bent, as if whoever opened it had been angry at how little money old paper contained. My father's discharge papers were there. The pocket watch was there. My savings bonds were there. April's original envelope was gone. So were the certified letters from Celeste Arden. But Trevor and Kelsey had made another mistake. They left behind the ripped mailing label from one certified packet stuck to the bottom of the safe under a loose savings bond. It had my name, my address, and a delivery date. 2 days before the break-in. I photographed it before Detective Bell bagged it. The external hard drive Rafael Ortiz had brought in turned out to contain video from April's porch camera in Idaho. She had bought a cheap security system after someone came onto her property at night. The camera caught Trevor on her porch 6 months earlier, standing beside my mother. My mother had told me she had not seen April in 14 years. On the video, April opened the door but did not let them in. She looked thinner, sicker, wrapped in a red scarf. Maya, smaller and scared, stood behind her. The audio was rough but clear enough. Elaine said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." April answered, "You told Nolan I was dead." Trevor looked away. Elaine said, "He accepted it." April's voice broke. "Because you lied." Then Trevor said, "Uncle Gavin says if you sign the trust paperwork, everyone can move on." April laughed, but it sounded like pain. "Of course Gavin sent you." Elaine stepped closer to the door. "You think Nolan wants this? He couldn't even raise his own son without turning him into a filing cabinet." Trevor's face tightened, but he did not defend me. April said, "Noli would come if he knew." My mother replied, "Then it's good he doesn't." The video ended when April shut the door. I watched it 3 times. Mara watched it once and said, "That will matter." But the hardest evidence did not come from the safe or the hard drive. It came from a school folder. Maya's elementary school in Idaho faxed records to Mara with Celeste's authorization. Emergency contact forms, attendance notes, counselor reports. On one form dated 9 months earlier, April had written, "If I am unavailable, contact my brother Nolan Mercer in Willow Creek, Oregon. He has been separated from us due to family interference, not by choice." Under that, the school secretary had handwritten, "Called number provided." Adult female answered, stated Nolan Mercer is deceased. Removed contact per grandmother request. Adult female, Elaine. My mother had killed me on paper too. When Mara showed me the form, I did not react immediately. I took it home and placed it on my table beside the estate petition that also called me deceased. 2 documents, 2 separate lies, same purpose. Erase the safe man, access the child. I stood there for a long time, then I washed my coffee mug, then I washed it again. The next morning, Child Services allowed supervised visits with Maya at Ruth's house. At first, we did small things. We sat at the kitchen table. She drank strawberry milk. I drank coffee. She showed me how the red truck could still roll if you pushed it gently on the side with the missing wheel. I brought a small bag of library books because I did not know what children liked, and a librarian told me mysteries were safe. Maya chose the one with a dog on the cover. "Do you have a dog?" she asked. "No. Do you like dogs?" "Yes. Why don't you have one?" "Never had anyone to help me name it." She considered that. Mom said naming things makes them real. She was right. Maya looked out the window where Ruth's wooden bird turned slowly. "Did she name me real?" I had to look down. "Yes," I said. "Very real." On the 3rd visit, she asked about Trevor. "Is he your kid?" "Yes." "Did he steal the gray box?" I did not answer quickly. Detective Bell is figuring that out. "But do you think he did?" "Children can smell adult fog," I said. "I think he helped take something that wasn't his." "Will he go to jail?" "I don't know." "Will you be sad?" "Yes." She nodded. Mom was sad about Grandma but still scared of her. "That was one of those sentences a child should not know how to build," I asked. "Did your mom talk about Grandma Elaine a lot?" Maya shrugged. "Only when mail came." "What happened when mail came?" She would get quiet. Then she would put papers in the blue folder. "What blue folder?" Maya thought for a moment. "The one inside the wall." I set my coffee down. "What wall?" "At our house. Behind the laundry shelf." Mom said walls are better than people sometimes. That afternoon, Mara called Celeste. Celeste contacted the Idaho court. A local deputy went to April's house with authorization. Behind a loose panel in the laundry room, they found a blue folder sealed in a plastic bag. Inside was the rest of my sister's life. Copies of letters to me returned. Photographs of Maya at ages 1, 3, 5, 7. Medical bills. A diary page about Trevor's call. A written timeline of every contact from Elaine and Gavin. A notarized standby guardianship designation. A letter of intent. A trust summary. A handwritten list titled, "If they come for Maya," at the bottom of that list, April wrote, "Ronley will not shout. Do not mistake that for weakness." I read that line in Mara's office and felt my sister beside me for the first time in half my life. The guardianship designation was clear. If April died or became incapacitated, she requested that Maya be placed with Nolan Thomas Mercer, maternal uncle, former police evidence technician, current county records officer, resident of Willow Creek, Oregon. She stated that I had been prevented from knowing Maya through false statements by Elaine Mercer and Gavin Mercer. She excluded Elaine due to coercion and emotional abuse. She excluded Gavin due to financial exploitation. She requested that Trevor Mercer not be used as intermediary because he had recently participated in intimidation, my son's name, in legal ink. Mara read the document and said, "This changes the center of gravity." Before that paper, I was a grieving uncle with questions. After it, I was the person my sister chose. The hearing was scheduled for 11 days later in Oregon, with coordination from Idaho. Because Maya was physically present in Oregon, an emergency jurisdiction had been triggered by the motel abandonment. Mara warned me it would not be simple. Gavin had hired an attorney. My mother had submitted a declaration saying April was unstable, and I was emotionally unsuitable. Trevor and Kelsey filed a competing petition for temporary guardianship, claiming they had a stable two-parent home and an existing bond with Maya. Existing bond. Maya had known them as the people who put her in a motel. Mara handed me their petition. I read it once, then I opened a new binder. People think quiet revenge is dramatic. It is not. It is boring work done with a steady hand. I built the file in my dining room under the porch light. Exhibit A, Maya's birth record. Exhibit B, April's death certificate. Exhibit C, April's notarized standby guardianship designation. Exhibit D, April's letter naming me. Exhibit E, school emergency contact form showing my removal after false death claim. Exhibit F, estate petition listing me as deceased. Exhibit G, family services contact sheet marking me unsafe in Elaine's handwriting. Exhibit H, porch camera footage showing Elaine and Trevor pressuring April about trust paperwork. Exhibit I, motel receipt paid by Kelsey. Exhibit J, taxi driver statement from Rafael Ortiz. Exhibit K, storage unit rental tied to Kelsey and recovered safe. Exhibit L, representative payee inquiry using Elaine's address. Exhibit M, Gavin's estate filing. Exhibit N, visitation notes from Ruth Calder documenting Maya's comfort with me. Exhibit O, Maya's drawing of the porch light and Uncle Noli. I numbered pages until my hand cramped. I made a timeline from April's death to the break-in. I highlighted contradictions in yellow. I used blue tabs for documents, red tabs for money, green tabs for child welfare, gray tabs for the burglary, gray for the safe. At 1:30 in the morning, I found myself holding the red toy truck. Maya had let me borrow it to show the judge that Mom remembered. One wheel missing, paint worn off the roof, initials still visible underneath. I placed it in a small evidence-style box, not because it needed to be evidence, but because I needed to remind myself what the file was really about. Not money, not my mother, not even April, though her ghost moved through every page. A child with a lunchbox had asked if she was in trouble. The following Sunday, my mother called again. "Come to dinner," she said. "No, there are things that should not be said in court. Then you shouldn't have done them." She exhaled sharply. "You are enjoying this." I looked at the binder on my table. "No, you always wanted to prove you were better than us." I wanted my sister alive. Her silence cracked for the first time. When she spoke, her voice was lower. "You think I don't know that?" I said nothing. She was 20, pregnant by a man with no future. Your father was sick. The church was already whispering because Gavin had been arrested for that stupid theft. I had held this family together with both hands, and April was going to drag us into another humiliation. And Maya? I did not know there would be a Maya then. But later you did. She should have let decent people adopt the baby. The words settled between us. There are sentences that cannot be forgiven because they are not accidents. They are windows. "You mean she should have disappeared cleanly," I said. My mother's voice hardened again. "You do not understand what it meant in those days. 14 years ago was not 1850. You always do that. You make everything sound simple because paper doesn't bleed." "No," I said. "People bleed. Paper remembers who held the knife." She hung up. 2 days before court, Mara arranged a pre-hearing family conference at the Child Services office. It was supposed to see if any agreement could be reached. Mara warned me not to expect one. The conference room had beige walls, a long table, and a window that looked out on the parking lot. A box of tissues sat in the center like a prediction. Maya was not supposed to be present for the adult discussion, but Ruth had brought her to the building for a separate child advocate meeting. She sat down the hall with a case aide, coloring. My mother arrived in a navy dress and pearls. Gavin wore a sports coat too tight across the stomach. Trevor looked exhausted. Kelsey looked annoyed. Their attorney, a man named Patrick Lorne, shook hands with everyone except me, which I appreciated for its honesty. The child welfare supervisor, Ms. Alvarez, opened the meeting. "We are here to determine whether temporary placement can be agreed upon in Maya Price's best interest." My mother folded her hands. "Maya Mercer." Mara looked up. "Her legal name is Maya June Price." Elaine smiled thinly. "Blood matters." I felt Mara glance at me, warning me not to respond. Patrick Lorne began with polished concern. Trevor and Kelsey had a home. They had parenting experience through church youth programs. They were younger, they were married. Nolan was single, rigid, and had limited emotional connection to the child. Elaine was willing to support placement with Trevor, preserving family unity. Family unity. I wrote it down. When it was Mara's turn, she did not argue feelings. She slid copies of April's guardianship designation across the table. Then the school form. Then the false death statement. Then the motel receipt. Patrick Lorne's expression changed by fractions. Gavin leaned back. This is exactly what I mean. Nolan turns everything into a trial. Mems Alvarez looked at him. This may become one. Kelsey whispered something to Trevor. My mother spoke softly. Maya needs warmth. Nolan has never raised anything except files. There it was again, polished for an audience. Gavin chuckled. A kid isn't an evidence box. I kept my eyes on the notebook, Mara said. No, she is not. Which is why we're concerned she was left at a motel under a false name. Kelsey's face flushed. She was not left. Arrangements were being made. Miss Alvarez looked up. What arrangements? Kelsey looked at Trevor. Trevor looked at the table. Patrick Lorne stepped in. My clients were attempting to avoid traumatizing the child with sudden state placement. Mara slid Rafael Ortiz's statement forward. By sending her alone in a taxi to their own house with $11. The room tightened. My mother's voice sharpened. This is being twisted. Maya was never supposed to be with strangers. Miss Alvarez asked. Then why was the named guardian not contacted? No one answered. The question sat there, simple and lethal. Miss Alvarez repeated it. Why was Mr. Mercer not contacted when April Price named him in multiple documents? My mother's hand moved to her pearls. Gavin said, because April was not in her right mind. Mara said the notarization was witnessed. Her attorney confirmed capacity. Gavin leaned forward. You people didn't know April. She lied. She ran. She had that child just to punish Mom. The door behind us made a small sound. I turned. Maya stood in the hallway holding a coloring page. The case aide was behind her, looking horrified. Gavin had spoken loudly enough for her to hear. Maya's face changed in a way I will never forget. It did not crumple. It emptied. She looked at Gavin. Was I punishment? No one moved. My mother closed her eyes. Trevor whispered, Oh God. Maya looked at me next, and that was worse, because children look to adults to repair the world even after adults break it. Was I not supposed to be born? I stood slowly. Mrs. Alvarez started to speak, but I raised one hand gently. I walked to the doorway and knelt, careful not to crowd her. No, I said. Her eyes shone but did not spill. You are not punishment. You are not a mistake. You are not trouble. Behind me, Gavin muttered. Jesus. I ignored him. I looked at Maya. You are the reason your mom kept fighting, she swallowed. Then why didn't Grandma want me? That question had no gentle lie inside it. So I gave her a truth small enough to hold. Because some grown-ups are scared of love when they can't control it. Maya looked past me at Elaine. My mother looked away. That was the first time I saw her lose something money could not restore. Maya handed me the coloring page. It was a porch light, yellow and bright, with two people standing under it. Can I go home now? She asked. I did not know which home she meant. Idaho, Ruth's house, a place that no longer existed, a place she hoped I might become. I said, soon we're going to ask the judge where safe is. She nodded. Okay. Then Ruth came and took her gently down the hall. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. No agreement. Only damage. That night, Trevor came to my house alone. I saw his car lights through the front window and considered not opening the door. Then I thought of him at 6 years old, standing in dinosaur pajamas after his mother packed her suitcase, asking if people left because houses got too quiet. I opened the door. He stood on the porch in the rain without a jacket. Can I come in? No. His face tightened, but he nodded. I didn't know all of it, he said. I stood in the doorway, the porch light above us humming faintly. You knew April was alive. Yes, you knew Maya existed. Yes, you helped take my safe. His eyes filled with shame. Yes, there it was, the word I had been waiting for and dreading. I asked why. He wiped rain from his face. Grandma said April was using Maya to get to you. She said if you found out, you'd give everything away trying to fix the past. Gavin said the trust would get swallowed by lawyers if we didn't step in. Kelsey said we could give Maya a better home than some foster stranger. And the motel. He looked down. That was Kelsey. She panicked after the detective called about the safe. Did Maya hear you talking about checks? He closed his eyes. Yes. The rain fell harder. I felt old suddenly, not 52, older than my father at the end. You told April I didn't want her. Trevor's mouth trembled. Grandma wrote down what to say. You said it. He nodded. I was angry at you. That surprised me. At me? You were always correct. After Mom left, after everything, you made lunches, paid bills, showed up to conferences, but you never told me you were scared. You never fell apart. I thought that meant you didn't feel things like other people. I looked at my son, the man my silence had helped shape. So you punished April? No, I thought. He pressed his palms to his eyes. I don't know what I thought. Grandma made it sound like cleaning up a mess. A child is not a mess. I know that now. No, I said. You know you got caught. He flinched. I hated that it hurt me to hurt him with the truth. Trevor reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I found this in Kelsey's glove box. He held it out. I did not take it. What is it? Copy of a change of address form. For Celeste's mail to you. Kelsey submitted it online using your information. She redirected the certified packet to a postal box Gavin opened. My stomach turned. Mail fraud. Identity misuse. More paper. More rot. Why bring it now? Because Maya heard Gavin. His voice broke. Because I saw her face and remembered being little and waiting for someone to say the thing adults wouldn't say. For a moment there he was, my son, not the liar, not the accomplice, the boy in dinosaur pajamas. But Maya had been a little girl too. April had been 20 and scared. My softness had arrived too late for too many people. I took the paper by the corner. Are you willing to give this to Detective Bell? He nodded. And testify? His eyes widened. That was the line between regret and cost. Dad, I stepped back. Then we're done for tonight. Nolan. He almost never called me that. I looked at him. If you want to protect someone, start by telling the truth when it can still hurt you. I closed the door before he answered. Through the window, I watched him stand under the porch light for a long time. Then he walked back to his car, shoulders bent under the rain. I did not sleep. The hearing was held in a small family courtroom on the second floor of the county courthouse. There were no grand columns, no dramatic jury box, no polished speeches like television. Just beige walls, a state seal, a digital recorder, and a judge named Ellen Harrow who looked like she had heard every kind of lie and was tired of them all. Maya was not in the courtroom at first. Her child advocate sat near the front with Ruth. Detective Bell sat behind Mara. Rafael Ortiz, the taxi driver, waited in the hallway wearing a clean shirt and nervous hands. Celeste Arden appeared by video from Idaho. My mother arrived with Gavin. Trevor came alone and sat on the opposite side from Kelsey, who arrived 10 minutes late with Patrick Lorne. That separation told me something. Not enough to forgive. Enough to note Judge Harrow opened the matter. We are here on emergency guardianship petitions regarding minor child, Maya June Price. My mother's lips tightened at the name Price, but she said nothing. Patrick Lorne argued first. He painted Trevor and Kelsey as imperfect but well-intentioned relatives who had acted quickly in a confusing interstate situation. He described me as emotionally distant, unmarried, and professionally trained to treat people like cases. He may be excellent with documents, Patrick said, but a child needs daily warmth, flexibility, and parental instinct. My clients can provide a family environment. Mara wrote one word on her legal pad and turned it toward me. Warmth. I almost smiled, then Mara stood. Your Honor, she said, this case is not about whether Mr. Mercer keeps a tidy file. It is about why so many people worked so hard to keep him out of one. She began with April, not as a scandal, not as an unstable woman, as a mother. She entered the birth record, April's death certificate, the standby guardianship, the letter of intent, Celeste's testimony about April's capacity and intentions. Celeste appeared on the screen and spoke clearly. April Price was specific. She wanted Nolan Mercer contacted. She believed her family would attempt to access Maya's funds and override her wishes. Patrick objected to speculation. Judge Harrow said, overruled as to the declarant's stated concern. Mara moved to the false death claims. She entered the school contact form where Elaine said I was deceased. Then Gavin's estate petition listing me as deceased. Then the family services sheet marking me unsafe. Judge Harrow looked over her glasses at my mother. Mrs. Mercer, you reported your living son as deceased on more than one occasion? Elaine sat very straight. I believed contact would be harmful. That is not what deceased means. The courtroom went still. Mara entered the porch camera footage. We watched April open her door. We heard my mother say, then it's good he doesn't. We heard Trevor mention trust paperwork. We heard April say I would come if I knew. I kept my eyes on the table. My mother watched the screen with a face carved from stone. Trevor looked like he might be sick. Then Mara entered the money trail. Representative payee inquiry. Elaine's address. Emergency estate petition. Gavin pastel box rental. Gavin chant of address form redirecting Celeste's certified mail. Kelsey's IP address. According to Detective Bell's preliminary report. Storage unit rental. Kelsey. recovered safe, my property, model receipt, Kelsey's card. Despite her claim she had never been there, survivor benefit estimate, $1,612 per month. Life insurance, $75,000. Minor trust, $148,000. House equity, approximately $240,000. Mara did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The numbers did what numbers do when people lie around them. They stood still. Patrick tried to redirect. My clients were attempting to preserve assets for Maya. Mara turned, by stealing the documents that named her guardian. Patrick flushed. Judge Harrow asked Trevor directly, "Mr. Mercer, did you remove the safe from your father's home?" Trevor stood slowly. Patrick began, "Your Honor, my client." Trevor said, "Yes." Kelsey turned sharply. The judge looked at him. "Did you have permission?" "No." "Why did you remove it?" Trevor's voice shook. "Because my grandmother and my brother-in-law, Gavin, said the guardianship papers were inside. Kelsey and I thought if my father got them, he would get custody before we could file." Gavin hissed, "Idiot." Judge Harrow's eyes snapped to him. "Mr. Mercer, one more word like that and you will wait in the hall." Trevor continued, "I told April my father didn't want contact. That was a lie. I repeated what my grandmother told me to say, but I still said it. I helped take the safe. I knew Maya was at the motel. I didn't leave her there, but I knew." His voice broke. "I'm sorry." The courtroom held its breath. Apology is not justice. But sometimes it is the first crack in a wall. Mara asked, "Did your father know Maya existed before Detective Bell brought her into the station?" "No." "Did he know April was alive before then?" "No." "Did you?" Trevor closed his eyes. "Yes." No one spoke after that for several seconds. Then Judge Harrow called a recess. I went into the hallway and stood by a vending machine that hummed louder than necessary. Rafael Ortiz sat on a bench nearby, twisting his cap in his hands. He looked up when he saw me. "You are Maya's uncle?" "Yes. She is a good kid," he said. "I know." She was scared, but she still said please. That nearly undid me. "Thank you for bringing her here." He nodded. "My mother used to say, when a child asks for police station instead of candy, believe the child." I shook his hand when court resumed. Maya's child advocate spoke. She said Maya felt safe with Ruth and increasingly safe with me. She said Maya identified me as, "The uncle mom told me finds things." She said Maya was afraid of Elaine, confused by Trevor, and did not want to live with Kelsey. Judge Harrow asked if Maya wished to speak privately in chambers. The advocate said Maya had drawn something for the court instead. The drawing was entered without objection. It showed a house with a porch light, a small girl, a tall man, a red truck on the steps. Underneath, in uneven letters, Maya had written, "Safe is where people tell the truth." I looked down at my hands. I had spent my career preserving truth for strangers. My sister had trusted that skill more than she trusted blood. Maya had turned it into a house. Judge Harrow took 20 minutes to review the filings. When she returned, everyone stood. Her ruling was careful, detailed, and devastating. Temporary guardianship was granted to me, Nolan Thomas Mercer, pending interstate coordination and final placement review. Maya's funds were to remain restricted under court supervision. No disbursements could be made without judicial approval. Gavin's estate petition was suspended pending investigation. Elaine was denied unsupervised contact. Trevor was permitted supervised therapeutic contact only if recommended by Maya's counselor. Kelsey was denied contact pending the criminal investigation. The judge referred the matter to the district attorney for review of potential theft, fraud, false statements, mail interference, and custodial endangerment. My mother did not go to jail that day. Gavin did not go to jail that day. Trevor did not go to jail that day. That disappoints people who think justice always wears handcuffs. But I watched my mother lose control in a public courtroom. I watched Gavin lose access to the estate. I watched Kelsey lose the child she thought came with checks attached. I watched the money locked behind a judge's order. I watched my sister's documents do what she had begged them to do. They did not go to jail that day. They lost the thing they wanted most, authority over the truth. After the ruling, Ruth brought Maya into a side room. The child advocate explained the order in words a child could hold. Maya listened seriously, the red scarf folded in her lap. Then she looked at me. "Do I go with you today?" I felt the room waiting for my answer. "Yes," I said, "if you want to." She looked at Ruth, who nodded with tears in her eyes. Maya picked up her blue lunchbox. "I want my truck." I opened my bag and took out the evidence box. Inside was the red toy truck with the missing wheel. She smiled for the first time like a child and not like a witness. In the courthouse hallway, my mother stood near the elevator. Gavin was gone. Kelsey was crying into her phone. Trevor stood apart from everyone, looking at me with a grief I recognized because I had given it to mirrors. Elaine looked at Maya. For 1 second I thought she might apologize. Instead she said, "This family used to have dignity." Maya moved closer to my side. I said no, it had secrets. The elevator opened. My mother stepped inside alone. Trevor approached slowly. "Dad." Maya's hand tightened around the lunchbox. I looked at him. "Not now." He nodded. Tears stood in his eyes, but he did not push. Maybe that was the first decent thing he had done in months. As Maya and I walked out of the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but a pale strip of light had opened behind the clouds. My truck waited by the curb. The same old Ford Ranger with a cracked dashboard and a passenger door that needed extra force to close. Maya stopped before getting in. "Is it far, my house?" She nodded. 10 minutes. "Does it have a porch light?" "Yes." "Is it on?" "It will be." She climbed into the passenger seat with the lunchbox on her knees and the red truck inside it. I buckled her seatbelt because my hands needed something practical to do. On the drive home, she looked out the window at the wet streets. "Did Mom ever come to your house when we were young? Did she like it?" "She liked the maple tree. Do you still have it?" "Yes." She nodded, satisfied. At home, I pulled into the driveway and saw the porch light glowing. I had left it on before court without thinking. Or maybe I had thought about it more than I knew. Maya stepped out of the truck and looked at the house. It was not ready for a child. The guest room had boxes. The fridge held eggs, coffee, mustard, and 1 apple. The bathroom cabinet had no bubble bath. The hallway was too quiet. I had no bedtime routine, no favorite cereal, no idea what size shoes she wore. But the locks worked, the truth was welcome. And the porch light was on. Inside, Maya walked slowly from room to room. She did not touch much. Children who have lost homes learn not to trust furniture too quickly. In the guest room, I had cleared 1 shelf. Not enough, but a start. She placed the blue lunchbox on it. Then she took out the red toy truck and set it beside the framed photograph of April holding her as a baby. Mara had made a copy for me. The original remained protected in the file. Maya touched her mother's face in the picture. "Mom said you keep things safe." I stood in the doorway. "I'm going to try." She looked at me. "Do you know how?" "No," I said honestly. "Not all of it." That answer seemed to comfort her more than pretending would have. She picked up the red scarf and folded it at the foot of the bed. "Ruth said I might have bad dreams." "You might." "What do I do?" "You wake me." "What if you're sleeping?" "I'll still wake up." "What if I'm too scared?" I looked at the porch light glowing through the thin curtains. "Then turn on the hall light." "I'll know." She considered that. "Can we get strawberry milk tomorrow?" "Yes. And maybe cereal that is not old person cereal." For the first time in weeks, I almost laughed. "Yes." She looked around the room again. Then she asked the question from the courthouse, softer this time. "Can I go home now?" I looked at the lunchbox, the red truck, the photograph, the scarf, the child my sister had carried through years of lies, and the room I had spent half my life keeping empty, because empty rooms cannot be taken from you. I knelt beside her. "We are home." Maya leaned forward slowly, giving me time to refuse a hug. I did not refuse. She wrapped her arms around my neck and held on with the careful strength of someone who had learned that people disappear. I held her back. Not too tight, not like evidence, like family. That night, after she fell asleep with the hall light on, I sat at the kitchen table and opened April's letter one more time. The house was quiet, but not empty. A child's shoes sat by the door. A blue lunchbox waited on a shelf. Strawberry milk was written on a grocery list beside cereal, toothpaste, and nightlight. Outside, the porch light burned steady over the steps. For years, my family had mistaken my silence for absence. They had hidden a child behind false records, stolen mail, and a missing safe. They had buried my sister once in words and tried to bury her daughter in paperwork. But paper remembers, so do children, so do brothers who take too long to open letters. I placed April's letter in a new fireproof box, not hidden in a closet this time, but on the top shelf of my office where I could see it. Then I wrote the date on a clean folder, Maya June Price, guardianship. For the first time in my life, a file did not feel like a wall. It felt like a promise. And down the hall, under a small square of yellow light, my sister's daughter slept safely in my home.